Hello, and welcome to In Need of Adaption, the series in which I look at books that I think deserve to be adapted to screen. To get us started with this series, I want to take a look at one of my favourite fantasy series from when I was a kid, Skulduggery Pleasant. If you enjoy content like this, please do remember to like and subscribe. Now let's get into it. So what is Skulduggery Pleasant? Skulduggery Pleasant follows the titular character of Skulduggery and his partner Valkyrie Kane. Skulduggery is a detective, he is magic, and he is also a walking, talking skeleton. Valkyrie Kane is new to the world of magic. She is introduced to it after her uncle dies, and she's a teenager. To put it blunt, he's dead, she's deadly. The bad guys don't stand a chance. Skulduggery and Valkyrie fight against ancient evils, vampires, remnants, even themselves to keep the world safe. The series is set in Ireland, and the author Derek Landy gives a rich history to the magical world in this series. There are sanctuaries all over the world filled with sorcerers, and there was a war. There's a chapter in book one called The Secret War, which details essentially how Skulduggery came into being a walking skeleton. He was killed in this war, and he came back. You're never told how he came back until much later in the series. It is book six that you finally find out what brought him back. So already there's such story potential in adapting that to live action. As well as Skulduggery and Valkyrie Kane, you also have characters like Ghastly Bespoke, China Sorrows, Fletcher Wren, and Tanith Lowe. Each of these characters is brilliant, they're developed fantastically throughout the series, some tragically, and the dynamic between all these characters playing off each other is fantastic. Derek Landy was absolutely fantastic at giving each character a voice without making them seem too similar. Most of the characters are quite funny, and they can banter with each other and have fun, but they're not the same, which is always really nice when each character has their own individual voice. So in adapting this series, I would lean towards adapting it for TV. The reason for that is that there's a lot of content for Skulduggery Pleasant. In the original series, there were 9 books. And then, a few years later, Derek Landy went back to the series and continued. Now there are 18 Skulduggery Pleasant books out. That's not including novellas and short story collection and all that. There's a lot of Skulduggery. I haven't read them all. I read the original 9 when I was a kid and loved them, and I recently this year purchased the original 9 and I reread them and they were great. I also have the next set of 9 and I'm going to read those later in the year. But right now, if I was to adapt this, I would focus on the original 9 books. Focus on adapting those and telling that full story, because the series of the original 9 very much was a full story. So if you were only to adapt that, it would work great. And what's really nice about those original 9 when I was reading it is the seeds that are planted early on and not paid off for a while. That we don't find out how Skulduggery Pleasant is a walking, talking skeleton until much later in the series. So he's introduced obviously in book 1, but you don't find out until book 6 why he is the way he is. No, there's always hints as to his past and sort of a darker history behind him, but you don't find out what actually happened until book 6. There's also other elements. The big bad throughout the series, who's always kind of there, is Darquis. The first mention of her is in book 4, Dark Days. She appears intermittently throughout the series, but she's finally fully present and the big bad in book 9. So there's 5 books there where she's first mentioned to actually being the big bad. So I believe adapting those first 9 books across 9 seasons of television would work brilliantly. Now nowadays I know 9 seasons is, I don't know if you could guarantee they would get to the end of the 9. I would really hope so, because I would love to see them adapted. I'm also not sure if I would do it as a live action series, because he is a skeleton. It may be hard with the budget to do that every episode. Now, there is an element introduced in a later book, book 5, I believe, Mortal Coil, in which Skulduggery Pleasant can essentially put on like a camouflage which hides his skeleton. He looks like a regular person. Now, in the book, as I say, that doesn't come in until book 5, and each time he does it, it's a different face. I think if you were adapting it, you could maybe introduce that earlier. Have it introduced possibly in the first season if you were adapting this to live action, and also have it be one face, so you only have one actor for it. I think that's important, that you're not changing the face just to be just to adapt it correctly from the book. So that's a slight change I would make if you were adapting it to live action, to make it work a bit better and not always have to do a live action skeleton. The other option is a stylized animated series, which I think the series would really lend itself to. If you had it in a really cool art style, it's a skeleton in a suit, who's really cool. You could animate that really nicely. And with all the magic in the world, um, they'll be throwing fire about. You can make it look so nice. And in fact, all the illustrations on the cover of the books look so nice. So essentially, if you could adapt sort of those styles of each character, it would work well. I mentioned briefly there the magic in the world. That's another thing Derek Landy did very well. The magic system is explained well in the first book, and it gets enhanced as you go through the series. So you learn about different aspects. You know, you start off, you have two separate types of sorcerer. You have adapt, adepts, and elementals. So elementals does what it says in the tin. They control the elements: fire, earth, wind, and water. Adepts then are a more focused discipline. So you have necromancy. You have so many skills. Like China Sorrows has basically where anytime someone sees her, they fall in love with her, which is really fun. Um, so I think this series, it's a series I rarely see talked about online, which is a real shame because it is so good. And I think if it was adapted to live action or an animated series, it would do so well because it is so fun. Like I mentioned earlier, the dialogue between characters, it's all just so fun. So seeing that adapted would be really nice. And in a world where HBO Max are going back to Harry Potter and making that essentially the same as the movies, why not try something new? Why not find a new fantasy series that kids would love? So that's my take on adapting the Skeleton Detective Skulduggery Pleasant. If you enjoyed this video, please do remember to like, comment, and subscribe, because I'll be making plenty more content like this in the future. And let me know in the comments if you have any book that you would like to see adapted, or if you've read Skulduggery and what you think they could do with an adaptation. Who would you cast? Thank you so much for watching.